Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. I want to jump right into the show this week. We're joined by, again, I should say, State Senator Jamila Nasheed from here in St. Louis. Senator, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Always a pleasure to be here.
We are hot off the veto session where you were all over the news. Let's start with the gun bill. You opposed it. Why?
I opposed the gun bill because we're seeing too many deaths in the city of St. Louis. We have too many guns on the streets here in the city of St. Louis, and we don't need to soften the laws when it comes to guns.
So this bill basically gives you the opportunity to carry your concealed carry without a permit, and you can put a jacket on over it. Do you really believe that one more person will be shot in St. Louis, or one more person will be shot in St. Clair, Missouri because of this?
I think when you have law enforcement against the gun bill that we just passed, that means that we have a problem with guns in the state of Missouri and the city of St. Louis.
You've never minded to stand up to law enforcement, though, right?
Say that again?
You've never minded to stand up to law enforcement when you disagree with them, right?
Again, I do believe at the end of the day, we should not be soft on guns when it comes to legislation, okay? You just saw a situation that occurred where a young man in a conceal and carry state, open carry state, was shot by way of a police officer. Police are fearful already when they're on the street. So when we have open carry, when we have individuals that they're making it easier to access guns, it's a problem. It's a serious problem. We need training. Individuals, they need training when they are operating a gun. They need training when they're operating a car. So why shouldn't they have the opportunity to go get trained to carry a gun here in the state of Missouri? There shouldn't be a time where individuals are carrying guns and they're not trained to do so.
You mentioned law enforcement a couple of times. One of the most high-profile parts of veto session was your protest. You've been criticized, you've been praised. Why did you sit down?
Well, I sat down to stand in solidarity with those throughout the country who are seeing injustice occur each and every day. Even in the state of Missouri, we have Republicans that are trying to do all they can to turn back the clock on the voter rights movement. They're trying to do all they can to stop individuals from having quality health care. Women are not equally paid when it comes to men here in the United States of America. And so I love America, make no mistake about it. I love my country. But at the end of the day, we have a stain in our fabric that needs to be cleaned, okay?
And that's what the protest was about?
And that's what it was about. It was about basically shining the light on the injustices that's occurring, not just in the state of Missouri, but throughout the country.
Do you regret it?
Not at all.
In January, be the same ceremonies before the Senate opened each day. Will you sit down again? That
was a statement that I made then, and I would begin to continue to do what's in the best interest when it comes to fighting injustice. Now, would that be a case? Would it be a case where I would sit down again? I don't know.
Let's talk about the voter ID bill, something you've been very active with. You know, this has been a long-time policy for Republicans. They've pushed this. You fought it every session. This time, it's a very watered-down version that you were against. If you're gonna, I would assume that if a Democratic state's gonna have a voter ID, the Democrat Party would want it to be this voter ID. You did a lot of work to make it a weak voter ID. Are you sure forcing PQs on it was the right move?
Well, you know, I don't think PQs should ever really be forced upon
even in veto
the Senate.
session?
Not even in veto session. I think that, you know, that's a rare move that we should make in the Senate. We don't want the Senate looking like the House. That's the upper chamber. And I think that we should stop and think about how we use PQs moving forward, because it can really slow down and break down the Senate. And that's what we don't need.
The majority's heavily criticized when they use them during session. During veto session, it seems like the minority gets more criticism. I mean, these are bills that you've come to some agreement with to let them move forward. It wasn't PQ'd during session. Do you think it makes it easier for them, the majority, to PQ bills in January when you force PQs in veto session?
I think so.
Moving forward with the voter ID bill, it looks like it goes to the ballot. There's a race here in St. Louis that's impacted that discussion, at least, and maybe people argue the facts aren't the same, but do you think the voter ID bill passes statewide?
Hopefully it won't. again, we don't have a problem with voter impersonation. We have a problem with voter participation.
Every time they hold an election in St. Louis, there's some problem. Not enough ballots, throwing elections out.
But we've never had a case with voter impersonation. And so why are we dealing with a problem that doesn't exist? Let's deal with, and let's come together as a collective, Scott, and begin to figure out how we're going to get people to the polls. We have a low turnout throughout the state of Missouri, especially in the city of St. Louis in any given election.
Do you think the Secretary of State should just be over it? These election boards clearly aren't effective. Should the Secretary of State just be over elections, even in St. Louis? So there is somewhere the buck stops.
Well, city of St. Louis is a home
And St. Louis County.
Well, we have a home rule city, and I think that we can rule our own home. I don't think that the Secretary of State should be over
If the problems persist, do you think you need to have the Secretary of State be in charge, an elected official?
I don't think so, no.
Interesting. Let's move forward. The governor's race, very interesting governor's race. I know you've publicly supported Chris Koster, but it's an odd thing when I see Jamila Nasheed supporting someone that the NRA supports, the Farm Bureau supports, the corn growers, the Cattlemen Soybean Association. Do you ever worry you're supporting a too conservative a candidate?
No, I am very confident that I am supporting a person that will win this November, that will be the governor, a man that can truly work across party lines. He pushed bipartisanship in a manner in which we haven't seen in decades here in the state of Missouri, and I think that's what's hurting this state, the lack of partisanship. Bipartisanship.
You're a legislator. There's a lot of folks that watch this show that they understand the process. It would be interesting to go from Jay Nixon, someone who even, I think it's fair to say, criticized for maybe not being as engaged enough in the legislative process. Eric Greitens has a very, very low opinion of even Republicans in Jefferson City. Koster might be somebody that could work with you, that could work with it. When you could bring you and David Sater together behind a bill, he might be somebody that could forge that gap.
Koster has the experience. He worked in the Senate. I think that he's going to be the governor that we haven't seen in a long time.
If he's too conservative a governor, will you speak out?
He's going to come to the Senate often, I believe. Yeah. And he's going to interact with both Republicans as well as Democrats. He's going to be a hands-on type of governor, and that's what we need here right now.
Chris Koster's governor of Missouri, and he governs what you consider to be too conservatively. Will he be hearing from you?
Oh, absolutely.
I believe that. Let's talk about the presidential race. My gosh, the governor's race is very odd. When we just said Jamila Nasheed in between Farm Bureau and NRA, that's not a sentence we normally say. Nationally, it's really weird. Donald Trump's a very different kind of candidate. Hillary Clinton, wow. I mean, is it hard to support her?
It's not hard to support her. She has the experience. You talking about the First Lady, Secretary of State, attorney. I mean, she has all of the experience that's needed to, get the ball rolling and turn this country around.
Why does she have so many scandals? Wouldn't that experience give her better judgment to not use private servers, to not do these shady things with this foundation? If she has all this experience, you would think it would give her better judgment, right?
But what we don't need is a president that is strictly promoting entertainment. I mean, we have an entertainment type guy that's on this circuit right now for the president of the United States.
Do you look back and say, if the Republicans nominate Marco Rubio, he's killing her 10 points? Or you're like, thank God we had Donald Trump's on the other side? Because Republicans look at Hillary Clinton and think, thank goodness it's her.
Scott, I truly believe that the voters will see Donald Trump for who he is, and he's no more than an entertainer.
I know there's Republicans
he's
that are like,
an entertainer,
thank God Joe Biden's not the nominee.
And
he would win 40 states.
He's the guy that will not make this country great again. He doesn't have any experience. He doesn't bring forth any ideals in terms of policy-wise. I mean, he basically attacked every segment of our population, from the veterans to the women, okay? We're talking about every segment, the disabled. So, I mean, he's more of an entertainer than a man that's ready to be the president of the United States here in America.
Senator Jamila Nasheed, the most interesting election of our lifetime. Thank you so much for being here on This Week in Missouri Politics. And we look forward to having you back as we head into the most interesting legislative session, maybe in a generation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. It's always a pleasure.
We're going to take a little break from what we normally do at this point. We leave you with the economic indicators. We're going to leave you with the polling we did. Missouri Times does polls every week on statewide races, always the governor's race. We also have the AG's race and the Secretary of State's race. We partnered with Remington Polls, and we'll leave you with those polls right now.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
For years, Jason Kander's been trying to create a liberal majority.
They're going to call you pinkos, commies, lefties, activists, liberals, and tree huggers. If you stay true to your values, they're going to have to call you the majority.
Kander values expand Obamacare, higher job-killing taxes, even a huge new energy tax, more Washington policy mandates.
They're going to call you pinkos, commies, lefties, activists, liberals, and tree huggers.
Jason Kander, wrong for the U.S. Senate, wrong for Missouri.
I'm Roy Blunt, and I approve this message.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Welcome back with our Opinion Maker panel. Representative Elaine Gannon, first time on the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
Somebody we've asked many times, David Wassinger, attorney here in St. Louis. Glad to have you, sir.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
Tashara Jones, a stranger to no one in Jeff City or in St. Louis now. Glad to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
And we have St. Louis legend, someone I'm thrilled to have on the show, Ray Hartman. Mr. Hartman, thank you so much for coming on.
Honored to be here.
Let's start with the governor's race. The Missouri Times released a poll Wednesday showing Chris Koster up 10 points over Eric Greitens. The viewers can see on the screen now, 47-37. Is that where you think the race is?
Yeah, I give credibility to anything I read in the Missouri Times.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah, I think Chris Koster's going to win. I mean, this is a year where the more you know, the less you know. So I hesitate to do too much procrastinate. What am I trying to say?
Well, just putting it off.
But I think Chris is, first of all, the better candidate. That's my bias. I think he's more experienced and he really presents an opportunity for some bipartisanship in Jefferson City. But in addition to that, he's got the experience of winning statewide, and that's a big mountain to climb even in the year of the outsider.
David Wassinger, you follow politics a lot. I've known you to be a very straight shooting guy. Is 10 points too much to make up in this race for Eric Greitens?
Scott, the governor's race is an interesting race, as is the presidential race. And prior to answering that, you've asked me to be on the show a number of times. You can take the country out of the boy, but you can't, or can take the boy out of the country, but not the country out of the boy. I'm from Hannibal. Prior to coming on your show, I went out and got you a home warning present, as we do customary in Hannibal.
Oh,
I know you have a fondness for Donald Trump and his guests. Your motive is to make Missouri great again.
Oh,
so
man.
I have got you ahead.
Oh, this is just outstanding. You're going to make my day. My dad down in Poplar Bluff is going to be the happiest man to see me wearing this. Thank you very much. I'm going to set it right here by me. I appreciate it.
So I appreciate you having me on. Thank you, Scott.
So both of them want to make Missouri great again. Is Eric Greitens behind too far to actually pull it off?
Well, here's my thought. It's an outsider year. There's an old adage from Mark Twain, who's also from Hannibal. Politicians and diapers must be changed often and for the same reason. I think we're in a year where politicians need to be changed, and this may be the year Eric Greitens does it. If he does it, I think it would probably be the biggest upset in the history of Missouri politics. He's beat three formidable primary opponents and beaten a very formidable Democratic opponent.
Representative Gannon, it's a really odd, Mr. Wasser, you mentioned an odd year. Eric Greitens certainly believes politicians need to be changed out, and he even thinks you need to be changed out. Is it making it hard to support him?
Well, no, I know Eric personally. He is an outsider. I think that he will bring new ideas into the Missouri government and work very well across the aisle with both sides of the party. I also know the Democrat candidate, and I think he is capable of the job also, but I'm supporting Eric Greitens. And
very interesting. You know him personally. Have you ever been talking or been like, well, I'm not corrupt. Why do you call me corrupt? Does he give you any facts to back that up with?
You know, you are correct in asking me that, because I know a lot of people have resented Eric calling the House and the Senate corrupt, or corrupt politicians, getting rid of corrupt politicians.
Saying why. I mean, if somebody
That's exactly
is corrupt,
right. You're exactly right.
Admirable.
It's not honorable, and that's something that I think he does need to stop doing.
General Jones, there's friction on the Republican side, but I've wondered, as I've seen, Koster's been heralded as a great politician, securing Farm Bureau, securing NRA, all the groups that normally with Republicans. I wonder if when folks in the city of St. Louis see a Democrat endorsed by the NRA, if there's not some friction in the Democrat Party as well.
I think there's a little friction, I'll say hesitance amongst the African American community with Attorney General Koster, in that a lot thought that he should have been more visible during the primary and more visible in his outreach to the community. However, I think that having Koster in the governor's office, with him knowing what our urban issues are, we have a better chance of someone actually paying attention to those. And not saying that Nixon did not, but I think that that would be a great addition to the governor's office should he win. And unfortunately, why is it always a guy that we're always talking about when we're talking about the governor's seat?
You have an announcement you want to make for 2020 on the show?
Missouri's not ready. They're not ready.
Both candidates live in the Central West End, right? I mean, Eric Greitens lives in the most urban area I can think of in Missouri. It would seem like he would have a natural draw to some Democrats, but you don't really see him going down that path yet.
The question I have about Eric Greitens, and you certainly are an example of the 11th commandment that Ronald Reagan used to talk about, being called corrupt, essentially being called out by corrupt and still being willing to stick with a guy. My question for Eric Greitens is, if he's an outsider with new ideas for state government, can anybody name one? Because I haven't heard it.
Yeah, I listened
can
to
anybody
on
name
Mark Reardon on KMOX, and I think he was almost getting frustrated because
can anybody name one new idea? I mean, he said he's outsider. We know he's none of the above. Can anybody please name one new idea that he's offering? I haven't heard one. I mean, maybe there's one. I don't know.
It was. I have to say, I've not heard a lot of new things. I've heard that a lot of the legislators in Jefferson City are bad people, and I think he's pro-gun, safe to say. But other than that, I have not heard a lot of new ideas. Do you think that ever trips him up, or do you just play that outsider card all the way through?
It may come down to the right to work issue. I think he's came in favor of right to work, and I think Chris Koster is opposed to right to work, so that may be a threshold issue that gets him to the promised land.
Is that enough?
I don't know. It's going to be an interesting election. Like I said, it will be a historic win for Eric if he does win it. Very
David Wozniak, you're an intelligent St. Louis attorney, and I'm just a simple hillbilly from West Butler County. But when I go to the Sawdust Saloon, I don't hear a lot of people talking about right to work or even knowing what it is.
I agree. Yeah. Now, I'm a simple hillbilly from Hannibal, Missouri, so to take that back. I told you can take the boy out of the country, but not the country out of the boy. You go up to Hannibal, I think the union workforce is primarily based in the metropolitan areas in St. Louis and Kansas City, so I think it's a valid point. And a lot of the younger guys, I think, that are part of the unions have some reservations. I had a contractor at the house the other day said the younger guys are getting a little frustrated when they see their bosses flying to Vegas for a conference and driving around a Cadillac Escalade. I think they get a little resistance.
Gannon, as a conservative, though, I just wonder, why do you want to pass another business regulation? When I watch the hearings in Jeff City, I don't see union-owned businesses coming and saying, please get rid of our union. I see people that don't have union workforces testifying about a law that wouldn't impact them in any way. at some point, as a conservative, can you just have the legislators stop trying to help? When you have, how many W-2 employees can tell people how to create jobs?
Well, you know, I live in probably one of the most heaviest union districts in the state of Missouri. And so as a result of that, I support the unions. I vote against right to work simply because that's my district. And if I lived in a different part of the state, I would probably support right to work. If I lived in Joplin or, go ahead.
In St. Louis, traditionally the business community, I don't know if anything's changed recently, but the RCJ and other business entities do not support right to work. And I'm a business owner that doesn't, but it is, again, not a new idea. I mean, it's not been the best idea for Republicans generally to win on, but you know, it is, at least it's a difference of opinion that's clear between the two of them, I'll give you that, but it's not, I keep coming back to it, the outsider with the new idea. It's an old idea. It's the same idea that's been out there. And I just don't see what's that different other than saying I haven't been part of the corrupt, just because I haven't been there. And
I'll give you a prediction,
I just don't see that.
I think it could be Eric Greitens. Most of his money comes from outside the state, people that probably have no real tie to the state. It gives him a limberness and an ability to say some things that other folks who have a lot of Missouri support can't do. I think Eric Greitens has a couple more plays to make in this race. I think it's far from over. When you have a woman with that much money, that good a communicator, it may be interesting. Let's talk about a race that's certainly not over. Just the presidential race. The first debate's coming up. The most interesting race, and in some ways the most depressing. You'd mentioned a female governor, a first female nominee for president. Are you kind of deflated that it's Hillary Clinton, though?
Absolutely not. I support Hillary Rodham Clinton for a number of reasons. First and foremost of which, she's not perfect, and no one is perfect. And we shouldn't judge people by the mistakes of their past. She has evolved. She has realized the things that she's done at the time where she made those decisions with the best information she had. And we should also not tie her to decisions that her husband has made. So all of that being said,
Should we give her credit for decisions her husband's made?
We shouldn't tie her to decisions that her husband has made. I'll just say that. But I think this is crazy that it's 2016 and we're just now electing our first female president, where the world has been electing female leaders of their countries and parliaments for years, and America is way behind, but we're behind in a whole host of things. But I support Hillary Clinton without reservation.
Mr. Hartman, it's interesting, when people spoke about Barack Obama, they talked about an impressive, articulate leader with ideas. When people talk about Hillary Clinton, they're like, well, she's not that bad. I mean, if you think about it, these were tough calls. There's a very difference of pride and respect, and even if you take, the Republican side has it too, but there's a very different way people talk about Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton.
I happen to think, and I'm not a Democrat, I'm an independent, probably the left of the Democrats. I was for Barack Obama in 2008 over her. I was for Bernie Sanders this time over her. I think she has gotten a raw deal in terms of her reputation. She is, I think, by far the most qualified person to be president since George H.W. Bush, not the second one, the first one, to be president. And I think she would be a good president, and she's a terrible candidate. Okay, but she'd be a good president. She's running against somebody who I would sum up with one word, which is bigotry, and that's the one that pops out. And it is not me saying that someone who supports him is a bigot, but I think he has built his campaign and his rise to whatever power he has on bigotry. And I think it's a real, Donald Trump would be a very, very dangerous selection, not only for the country, but for the planet.
Well, David Wazner, I think you could put us in the basket of deplorables. And I think that one thing Donald Trump has to do is convince people he's not a bigot. I think you can have policy stances and not be bigots. Is he able to do that? I mean, is the best move for him to just shut up and let Hillary Clinton be Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think Trump has a lot of energy, and I would describe it in 3 Ps: patriotism, passion, and I think the polling. So patriotism, again, another Mark Twain quote from Hannibal. Patriotism is supporting your country all the time and your government when it deserves it. And right now we've got I think a nationalistic versus globalistic attitude in the country. Trump has tapped into that patriotism. I think if you go up to Hannibal or down to Butler County where you're from, there's a lot of energy, probably more energy for this candidate than there has been since Ronald Reagan. Third, polling. I talked to a lot of friends. They will say they're voting for Trump, but frankly, they're embarrassed to admit it in public. So I think the polling is probably 3 to 5 points off because they're embarrassed to say they're going to be voting for Donald Trump. I think a lot of people wish he'd been governor of New York for 4 years to see what we're getting into. That's a big leap, to leap from private sector to the Oval Office.
Nobody in New York wishes that.
I agree. Well, governor of a state. Let me rephrase that. He's a resident of New York. So I think that's where Trump falls. I think he's got a lot of energy. He's a unique candidate.
I was so glad to talk about this race with you being here because Representative Gannon, you probably cross over and represent the most Democratic district represented by a Republican. You win every time with large margins. You know how to convince people to come over to your site and support you. Can Donald Trump do that in places that you represent?
I think so. I think the debates could be a game changer, and the first one, I believe, is on Monday night. I think Trump's new, the lady that is running his campaign, I think she is calming him down, and
she's done a good job, right?
I think she's done a very good job.
He talks
The fact
less.
that you have to calm a candidate down is
That's
crazy.
a fair point.
It's a good point. No,
Well,
it's
really,
right.
I think so, and I think that hopefully he will just let her run her mouth, at the debate on Monday night.
It might be interesting if neither one of them will say anything, seeing what the other one does.
Scott, I've been on the air, as you may know, on Channel 9 for 8 general elections now, and which is something. And I just can't. This one is. You're so right about the debates. This one is the most unpredictable election by far in our lifetime. That debate could swing things 10 points either way. I mean, I don't think there's anybody knows. I made the point about Eric Greitens, which I'll stand with, which is I don't know what his new ideas are. We know what Donald Trump's new ideas are. Building a wall to wall ourselves off from the rest of the world, having a religious test for Muslims and basically blowing up the First Amendment there, blowing up the First Amendment with regard to libel laws, obliterating the Geneva Conventions, obliterating our ban on torture. I mean, he's got a lot of new ideas. And so, treating Vladimir Putin as our bro,
All that in mind, though, give me a prediction here in our last minute. I assume we all think Trump probably wins Missouri. What does he win it by?
I'm so known for getting my predictions wrong. I probably shouldn't have said anything about Koster, probably the kiss of death. I don't have one because I'm serious. I think he could still lose it if he does as badly as he deserves in the debates, and he could win it by 20 points.
Trump carry Missouri?
If he does, it's very close.
Close? Trump carry Missouri?
I agree with the federal panelists. It's going to depend on the debates. If the election was today, 10 points.
Yeah, I think
10 points?
10 points.
Close. Close.
The debates, I think, will be a big indicator.
Stick around. We're not done here. We're going to continue the panel and talk about the 78th, some of the other polling we did this week on TWMP Overtime. Go to twmp.tv, and we will see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you in part by Sterling Bank.